I'm a seed saver and I like to save seeds. I used to buy seeds, but now I've kind of learned that I can just harvest my own and not have to buy as many, but I still buy. I still go to catalogs and buy, and that's how I actually learned what seeds look like in the wild, is when you're buying seeds in the store. So just a brief review of what we're going to do today is looking at the seed structure and some of the basics of what the seed does. Some popular seed terms that you'll hear in gardening. We'll look at some videos of harvesting seeds in the wild, which would have been last fall. And those are the exact same plants that you'll be working on today. So yeah, the hands-on seed harvest, and then we will regroup and review kind of what we learned and how we learned it. So the seed is sort of at the beginning and the end of a plant life cycle, which I find really fascinating. That's why I like to work with seeds and seedlings the most. The seed can be an undeveloped plant that's surrounded by nutrients. It is also when the seed decides to reproduce, or the plant decides to reproduce and go to seed. Seeds are also very good at adapting to the environment, adjust to the environment to enhance its survival. So there's a picture here of what the seed looks like with a lot of technical scientific terms that I'm not too familiar with, to be honest. But the plant life cycle is, this one here is kind of a basic one. And part of the plant life process is the germination of the seed, which is when the plant is or the seed is developing. It's either a seed or a spore under the proper conditions to germinate and expand into a seedling. So not all plants need all these conditions, but in most cases they will need some light. The seed will need some light, some type of moisture, and heat, as well as some nutrients, which is sometimes right in the soil that you're already planting it in, or it's sometimes provided in the seed itself. One term that you'll hear occasionally in gardening related to seeds is something called scarification. And it's really just a preparation for some seeds to help it germinate. And looking at this graph here, sometimes the larger seeds are really the ones that kind of need a pre-treatment. Sometimes people will soak them, but you can go a little too far with the soaking sometimes, so you gotta be careful with that. And sometimes people will nick or put a little slice into the seed to get that exposure to moisture and sun. What I have also found is that sometimes the larger the seed is, the deeper you're probably going to have to plant it in the soil when you do that part. Some people also feel the need to prepare the tomato seed when they harvest it by soaking off the gel that kind of forms around the seed. So, I mean, every seed is unique, so it's hard to cover it all, but this is just a general guide to, if you did need to pre-treat the seed, those are some options. Then there is the pollination process, which can happen in several different ways. Sometimes it can just be through air. This is one example of bee pollinating the zinnia plant, one of the ones you'll see today. The bees pollinating the plants enhances the overall biodiversity. You'll also hear terms like heirloom and hybrid related to the pollination process, and that can be pretty detailed. And we'll not go into a whole lot of detail on that today. But the hybrid is what's considered a cross-pollination, and sometimes is even a manufactured combination of plants to survive certain conditions. And here's the zinnia patch that I was talking about that you saw earlier with the little bee running around and pollinating them, and have a look at what dropping seeds in the natural looks like.
Today in the roots is gathering some zinnia seeds. It is the time of year. Today is September 2nd. And some of these flower heads are done flowering and have left a flower head that's going to give us seeds. So I'll clip those today so that we can get the most out of the seeds here and then collect them and keep them for next year and plant them again. So I noticed that some of these flower heads have started to drop seeds. So that's just a good sign of when I can start clipping them. So let's take a closer look at this flower head. And the seeds that have dropped below it onto the leaves. This flower head's still really pretty with the center star-shaped stamen. So I'll probably clip that flower head today and start gathering the seeds in my paper bag like I usually do. That's the best way to keep them dry. Now in this case I have two kinds of zinnias growing here. I wasn't going to be picky about the type. I wanted more variety. So if you're a little more concerned about what you're going to plant next year, this might not be ideal because you're not going to know now which is a state fair zinnia or a cactus zinnia because they're just all here together.
It's nice to see
These
flowers
orange
right now.
ones here are state fair, which have more of a rounded flower petal. And down here is a yellow and orange one that's a cactus zinnias with a more jagged flower petal. Both are beautiful, and getting some of these clipped than others flowers can produce, and it will certainly look better.
So after a couple months in the paper bags, when they're completely dry, I keep them in these Tupperware containers, which you can get really cheap at Goodwill and things like that. And it
Those are
also kind of
classic.
saves me from, crushing them when I brought them here, so it's
Right.
kind of been really useful. I thought it was kind of interesting too that it actually kept quite good color. And these have been in here for over a year now. There's quite a few purples and pinks in here, so. Tupperware is a good option after you've made sure that it's completely dry. In the fall, I have things drying all over the place. I have bags hanging, from clothes hangers. I also have my seeds that I collect on the plate. And we'll go over those different scenarios and what you might wanna do there. So another term that you'll probably hear occasionally, especially in Wisconsin, is either winter sowing, is also known as stratification. This is common with perennials. The perennials that like to multiply and will also have seeds. And a lot of people misunderstand these plants and think that they are too invasive in their garden. But my suggestion is to clip off those seeds and be a little bit more diligent about where you want them, rather than the plant just dropping them wherever. Or maybe you could share them with friends too, with someone that wants a plant like yours. Then you can clip down your perennial when it's gone to seed. And this is a good example of Columbine is the name of this plant. And, it's got beautiful flowers, and then it gets to this point where it's nice and dry on the ends. You can literally shake the plant and hear it rattle. So my suggestion in this type of case is don't go out there after it rains, because you're not gonna really notice that this has been dried up and kind of ready to go, because that rattle is really important, and keeping it dry. Otherwise, you're gonna end up with probably some mold or things like that. So this is me in my backyard, and I'm just clipping down the columbine, because I did hear it rattling in the wind one day, and putting it upside down in the bag.
Upside down in the bag. No, seeds will fall out.
Here, I'm gonna stop that quick, so I want you to hear it a little bit closer. You'll hear all kinds of seeds dropping in the bag.
Upside down in the bag. No, seeds will fall out.
So some of those seed heads, they point upwards, you know, but once you get it inside, underneath in the bag, all kinds of them dropped out there. So really what the winter sowing is about is, you know, the perennials in Wisconsin, they're used to cold. Keep them outdoors, you know, but you might want to keep them in a separate container so that they're not becoming invasive in your yard.
I harvested these columbine seeds about a month ago, which was clipping off the old flower heads, putting them in these paper bags.
This is a continuation from me cutting those down in my yard.
I harvested these columbine seeds about a month ago, which was clipping off the old flower heads, putting them in these paper bags and waiting. And there's a lot of seeds in the bags, so I'll show you how that looks.
So I waited one more month just to make sure the plant material was dry. Even though it seemed pretty dry already in the wild when I went out there.
So you just left the whole thing in there?
Yeah, in fact, I'll pull it out of the bag, you'll see the whole bit of it. So yeah, a lot of times your seeds are gonna be little black things, especially when it comes to the perennial flowers, and I think it's really helpful to just kind of lay them out on a white piece,
Here's the
like
flower
a
stalk.
plate that I brought
That
today,
they
or
came
even
out
just a
of.
piece of paper. So you can see here that flower stalk that I cut down, that's all that was really in that bag, just that little bit. And we'll see how many seeds, I mean, it's probably 100 seeds, I don't know, I didn't count them, but, so another
So
thing
that's
that
bag
people will
number one.
use is mesh sheets to separate
I'm
the
gonna try and
seeds
gather
from
some
the
of the
plant
seeds before I
material.
dump another bag. It's good to have a work mat or even a piece of paper will help you gather the seeds together. And there's still a lot of them coming out.
In this case, I didn't wanna really just crush the seed head, cause that would just kind of make a lot of
Shaking
plant
them is
material
producing
mess.
even more seeds still.
But you
So
could use a
I'm going
mesh
to probably just
strainer
put
for
them
that
back in this
process
bag.
too, to separate your seeds from the
And
plant
shake them
material.
up that way it won't just fly all over in my house here. We'll contain them in the bag. Upside down.
I'm gonna give it one more shake.
Then I can shuck them more violently.
I think we got a whole nother round. Just by reshaking it again, I mean, you can use
Now
containers
before
like
I dump
this, you
this
can use
next
your
round.
Tupperware container, or just a bag.
I'm gonna
Shake
clean
it
this
up.
up quick. Now watch how many more seeds we have. Got 10
Second shake.
from giving them another shake.
Wow.
It's a whole nother round. Seeds. I mean, the plant I cut down, it wasn't really a lot.
And after that last shake, that's pretty much all of these things are gonna give you. You could go in there and crush all of the seed heads, flower heads, by hand if you want. I feel like I got enough seeds. The other alternative is throwing these into your garden, and whatever seeds are left here will maybe take seed in your garden. So no need to throw them away.
Now you can kind of see the evidence of why people feel like these plants are a little bit invasive, right? So I also grow Chinese lantern plants in my yard, and those are also kind of misunderstood. But I always clip the Chinese lantern plants and I dry them because they look beautiful dried too. And it prevents them from just getting all over my yard. The columbine, I probably wouldn't mind if that took over my yard. And in my yard, I also sometimes get the columbine to come up twice in 1 year because of it dropping seeds. Here's another look at some more seeds that these are plants that I enjoy a lot, which is the zinnia and the cosmos. These are annuals, and the annuals are the plants that only grow the one season. The cosmos is neat because you can see the flower and the seed happening at the same time. The flower petals actually turn into seed. And I've gotten the cosmos to flower and reflower probably 2 or 3 times in Wisconsin. Has to be pretty sunny. Those will germinate in like 4 or 5 days if you put them in the sun. The zinnias are a little more picky and they take definitely longer to go, and I've never had luck with them, regrowing in twice in a season. But the zinnia, you'll see, and you'll see that today, as well as the seed is attached to the flower petal that you can see in this picture here. When you're gathering seeds from vegetables such as chili peppers, you're going to probably harvest those seeds fresh from the plant. You probably do that with tomatoes or really any other vegetable. So those are kind of a different drying process, and I use a lot of plates for that because I try to separate things, and sometimes use a fan, although you gotta be careful because it'll blow some seeds away on you. And I do have some pepper seeds available today, but of course, you cannot dehydrate a pepper and then decide to take the seeds out because the seeds won't be viable that way. And you have to be careful, it's an arduous process with peppers because they are so spicy, and having to work with the seeds and all that it's a little bit toxic, to be honest. So, let's look at some of the things we would save for seeds. Now earlier, when we were looking at the columbine seeds that I produced, some of these seeds can really get small. Really, really small. you're trying to put them into your garden, you might not, the soil is dark and so are the seeds. And you quite literally sometimes don't know where they're going when you plant them, right? So here's an example of something called seed tape, which you can do yourself with Elmer's glue. For when you have really, really tiny seeds, because now you can lay that seed tape in your soil and you know where you're going with it. You could also cut the seed tape down, so you're only using a couple seeds at a time.
You just think that tape is biodegradable, I just
Yeah,
put it in on the tape?
if you use Elmer's glue, it's supposed to be, safe that way. Some people have used, I think, some kind of syrup combination, if you wanna be really organic about it. So yeah, that's a native perennial, is this catchfly seed. It's kind of an interesting, it's almost like a little ground cover with a tiny little purple flower, it's kinda cute. I have a feeling that I'm not getting the greatest results out of it in my yard, cause it's kind of, I have a shady yard, so. Another good thing to use that we find a lot of today, don't throw these out, is silica packets. These gel silica packets will help keep your seeds dry, even though you might think that they are as dry as can be. Throw one of those in some of your packets too, and that'll help them last longer. So the other things that you're going to want to have when you're collecting your seeds is definitely some way to label your product. So I left you some markers. And if you want to, package up a whole bunch of different seeds, cause I have, pepper seeds as well. And then you can put them in your little bag to take home. Make sure you label, I'm not good at that. I have all kinds of things, even though I say I'm really good at labeling stuff, I forget stuff, and so I've come up with all these different ways, and I experiment. I put, sometimes I'll put the label inside the bag, I'll put the sticker on the outside of the bag, you can write down with marker. The only thing I don't like about writing it down with a marker is you can't recycle bag next time around. That's just because I like reusing stuff. So, let's look at some zinnias. And just like it was showing in the video, let's see if I can go back a couple slides. Here's a snapshot of what those zinnia seeds are gonna look like. And you literally just pull off the petals. And if you want to, you can also just crush it in your hand and see how that goes. I mean, really, this is all about just kind of touchy-feely, see what it looks like, compare it to, and you'll kind of feel like some of the material is soft and some of it's harder. Oh, here's a cool one. It's amazing here, actually. I haven't opened this in like a year.
Is it clearly labeled?
So these are a combination of the two zinnia flowers that you saw earlier, which was the state fair and the Catboon. Oh, I know, seeds are just so amazing. So, dive in, let me know if you have any questions. There's no wrong way to go about it. You could also, I haven't tried the shape method with zinnias.
These are the the seeds, correct? They look in there.
Yes, yeah, it'll look like a little arrow almost.
Would you break the forward part off?
Yeah, that's what I do. Yeah, so it looks kind of a little more stiff.
Yeah,
It'll
it's like
almost
this.
be like kind of hard on your fingernail.
This, the fingerprint doesn't seem to have a lot of, just maybe 4 petals. That's fine, and if you get up. So that's like with my tomatoes, I just like squish the rottenness tomatoes that are falling off. And like dig a hole and start digging a hole.
I also brought some baby's breath, which is another annual, those are kind of fun to collect seeds from too. Baby's breath works really good as far as that, kind of same thing. But they're just tiny little black things again.
This would be the winner.
Oh yeah, you get some right there on the end.
How do you know how deep the land is?
It's,
Google.
you know, it depends on every seed, the stuff I plant, it seems to wanna go really shallow.
Okay.
Like you almost see part of the seed sticking out of the ground, out of the soil, you know?
I suppose in nature, you just fall on the surface.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes the rain will take care of kind of putting it in there a little bit. So think about your family and your friends and who's gonna want some seeds. Get y'all ready.
Here's the seed, here's one of your seeds, you have it? Yeah, you got one. That's one right there.
Oh, yeah, yep. Yeah, maybe you can have a lot of this one.
There's another one there.
Yep.
They're coming out of this one.
If you like working with your hands, you're gonna like this kind of thing. That's another reason why I like it.
Is this one?
Yes. Now you're on a roll. See, if you get really good, they fall by your pile. And here's all kinds of.
And I actually really kind of learned this just, you know, I bought seeds and then
Right.
you see how it looks in the package. And then, hey, my garden is starting to do that at the end of the season and noticing it, the seeds dropping from the plant naturally. So for most of the flowers, you're gonna really kind of want it to dry on the plant. Leave it on the plant as long as you can, and then it'll start to dry on the plant.
Here's another, just like a doctor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who's ready to try a different flower completely?
I just put them in a bag. I was doing it right, I was putting them in a brown paper bag.
Brown already done with my garden.
No.
I didn't even know what I was doing.
Very different kind of seed.
We don't put it here.
Yeah.
They're already dry.
These are already dry. You can actually put them in the brown.
It's like, you'll
I
actually
can't
see
show it
like
open, my
there's
fingers.
black dots in there. Like,
Mhm.
you just pull
If you
one
look
off.
right on the plate,
Yeah.
right where you.
That's
And so there's a bunch of them